I'm a 42-year-old woman, and my husband is a 44-year-old man. We have a wonderful 17-year-old daughter. I have to confess that I had an affair. My husband works long hours as a real estate agent and is often away from home. In October 2020, I received a message from a guy on Instagram. Let's call him Jay, 24. We had a decent conversation, and it turns out he's the younger brother of a classmate from high school. We chatted for 7 months, and in April 2021, we met in person for the first time. After that, we started having an emotional affair that eventually turned physical in June 2021. Despite knowing that I had a family, I somehow convinced myself that what I was doing was okay. Looking back, I can't believe what I was thinking. It's clear that I was neglecting my husband in terms of affection and intimacy. We'd become more like roommates, just sharing the same bed without much interaction. He was going through a tough time at work, and I failed to be a supportive wife. Instead, I used to criticize him, argue over trivial matters, and even despised him, especially because Jay was more physically attractive than my husband. Jay started to believe that I had settled for less, even though I had a family and a good marriage. I need to be honest. The blame falls squarely on me. In August, his mother passed away, and he reacted very badly to the news. He had never had a good relationship with his mother, and she disapproved of me because of my past choices. I asked him to choose between us, which led to him rarely talking to his mom in front of me and meeting her without telling me. He began arguing with me more, blaming me for his mother's death, and claiming that I prevented him from seeing her. I even told him that I wanted a divorce in August, which shattered him even more. I rented a small apartment and moved out, taking our daughter with me. I told her it was because her father was going through a mental breakdown and becoming emotionally abusive. Jay would sometimes visit us, and I introduced him to my daughter. They became friends because they shared a similar interest in gaming. On September 24th, things took a terrible turn. Jay made an inappropriate advance towards my daughter, who managed to escape and immediately called her father. I was at the office at that time and my phone was on silent mode, so I couldn't be reached. When I finally saw her missed calls, I hurried home to find the house filled with police and concerned people. Jay had been taken to the hospital with a broken arm, a broken jaw, and swollen eyes. My daughter bravely told the police everything, her eyes red from crying. I tried to comfort her, but she pushed me away. Since my daughter was the victim and my husband had friends in the police department, no charges were filed against him. The police determined that Jay had been harassing my daughter. Later that evening, after things had calmed down a bit, my husband, along with my daughter, approached me seeking the truth. I finally confessed, apologized, and begged for his forgiveness. I cried, expressing deep regret and acknowledging that this was a terrible mistake, one that I never intended to happen. What hurt even more was when my daughter called me a homewrecker. My husband informed me that he intended to take our daughter with him, and we would be getting a divorce. He was pushing for full custody and planned to file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity. I pleaded with him to give our marriage another chance, but he seemed unresponsive to my pleas. I decided to cut off all contact with Jay. Then, on October 2nd, Jay's girlfriend, whom I had no knowledge of until then, reached out to me, hurling hurtful insults and expressing her wish for my family to fall apart, just as hers had due to her affair with Jay. Following that incident, I made an effort to repair my marriage. I attempted to reach out to my husband, but he blocked me on all forms of communication and even changed his phone number. I started individual counseling, read self-help books, and tried to be completely honest about everything. I also had a conversation with my daughter, who was reluctant to speak with me. I confessed everything to her, expressing my deep remorse, and explained that all I wanted was a happy family. I told her I was willing to give up anything to make it work. She accused me of being selfish and claimed that I had kept her father in the dark while pursuing a relationship with Jay. She even thanked me sarcastically for breaking up the happy family and home she had known. She mentioned that her father was introducing her to his side of the family, including his sister and brother, who were much nicer than I was.
Almost 10 years ago, I joined that forum because I needed help dealing with my wife's infidelity. It's worth mentioning that she wasn't unfaithful just once. It happened multiple times. Just a little over a week ago, my divorce was officially completed, putting an end to a 29-year-long marriage. It's all over now, completely dissolved, and it's painful to realize that it fell apart because my wife couldn't stay loyal. She couldn't uphold the promises we made in our wedding vows and chose to be involved with several other men. This was my second marriage, and it too ended because of infidelity. My first marriage, which lasted 10 years, was also ruined by infidelity. My first wife was a habitual cheater, and she even had a child with one of her affair partners, a fact I was unaware of until the divorce proceedings began. In moments like these, it's natural to start questioning yourself. You might wonder, was it my fault? Did I make mistakes? Did I do something wrong? Was I unfaithful? But the truth is, you were always faithful. You never strayed, never betrayed, not even once. So what went wrong? In my first marriage, I know my wife had experienced mistreatment from a relative and schoolmates. I didn't know these things when we got married. It doesn't justify her infidelity, but it provides some insight into it. Now, the story takes a different turn with my second marriage. In hindsight, maybe marrying her wasn't the best choice. However, if I hadn't, I wouldn't have my beloved children, the one positive outcome of that relationship. She's a self-centered and insensitive individual, showing little regard for others unless there's something in it for her. Let me recount how it all began. After my first marriage ended, and I was in a vulnerable place, a young, sweet, blonde woman entered my life. My ex-wife introduced us, which, looking back, should have raised some red flags. But given my circumstances and the fact that she was attractive, young, and interested in me, what else was a guy supposed to do? I spent the next 29 years regretting my decision. The first 6 years seemed fine, or at least that's what I thought. Then, everything fell apart. Starting in 1998, she had 6 affairs that I discovered, most of them related to her job as a registered nurse. This list includes a security guard, whom they met on restricted floors of the hospital where they worked and used the condoms stored there, another male nurse, a doctor, an orderly, a medical equipment salesman, whom she engaged with in her office during work, leading to her losing her job, and finally, the only affair unrelated to her medical work. It was with the husband of a couple we had been friends with for over a year. Surprisingly, he remains married while living with her. During that time, she had 2 breast augmentation surgeries, with the second one giving her double Ds. This choice was ridiculed because it didn't really suit her. A nurse friend of hers later told me that she did it to boost her attractiveness. Despite being apart for 4 years, she has been with the other man throughout this period. Meanwhile, I've had to take care of the kids, manage the household, handle the bills, and deal with the looming threat of foreclosure. This woman, who is supposed to be my wife, has a history of serial cheating with a documented record of 6 affairs. She and her new partner even built a new house together. She hardly spends any time with her children. Since the COVID-19 lockdown in March, she has seen her 14-year-old daughter only once. Even the older kids, aged 21 and 24, rarely have any contact with her. Over these 4 years, a lot has happened. She moved out, which was actually a relief, leaving me with the kids who were 10, 17, and 20 at the time. Just a month after she left, I received a prostate cancer diagnosis. Then I discovered mold in our master bathroom, which required a costly $40,000 teardown and repair. Thankfully, insurance covered it, but I still had to oversee the entire process. 6 months after she left, our oldest daughter, who was 25 at the time, and her boyfriend tragically died in a car accident. The year 2016 was incredibly challenging, almost as tough as 2020 has been. Oh, and did I mention that, by this point, we were 3 years into a bankruptcy as well? We had a sizable house with 3,200 square feet of space, and we had fixed it up to put it up for sale. However, there were no takers, not a single person interested in the property for 3 long years. As all of this was happening, I found out that she had stopped making mortgage and association fee payments. It was a shock because I couldn't afford to cover those costs. As a result, foreclosure proceedings were initiated, and they dragged on for 3 years. Finally, in late 2019, after the kids and I had moved into an apartment, the courts completed the foreclosure on our once valuable house, which was worth $600,000. And it was the very house she had wanted. Her father had even given her $200,000 as a down payment for it. But there's more to this story. We continued to file our income taxes jointly because otherwise, I would have faced significant tax burdens. Well, even with this oh-so-great arrangement, I still had the privilege of facing a lovely tax bill. She had made this grand promise to pay the 2016 taxes. But hey, who needs promises, right? Fast forward to 2018, and I got a delightful love letter from the IRS telling me I owed them $3,200. She couldn't be bothered to bat an eyelash at that. I had to work my magic to scrape that together, and thank my lucky stars that the IRS decided to throw a little party by letting me off with just interest instead of those pesky penalties. Oh, and let's not forget, I was also the lucky one to handle the 2017 and 2018 taxes all by my lonesome because, surprise, she was still MIA. Now let's jump to the fabulous year, 2019. The foreclosure drama unfolded in the late autumn, and I thought, this is it, it's finally over. But you know what they say about thinking. I had to drag my taxes to a CPA because, thanks to the foreclosure extravaganza, it became a tad too complicated for my taste. And guess what? We got a little bonus of owing an extra $4,500 in taxes, all thanks to the foreclosure fun. But no worries. She continued her grand tradition of showing zero interest in tackling this mess. Isn't it just mind-blowing? Luckily, I hit the jackpot and received both stimulus checks in one go, which I happily used to chip away at this unexpected financial masterpiece. Too bad for her, though. I had hit my breaking point and decided I didn't need any more of these delightful troubles in my life. So, naturally, I thought, why not file for divorce? It's almost like she was holding me back from all this bliss. It took a bit of effort to track her down and deliver those divorce papers. 2 whole weeks of my life. But our attorney mentioned that we could wrap it all up in a cozy 2 to 3 months. I've kindly informed her that our tax filing days as a team are over. She's flying solo from now on. Plus, I've made it crystal clear that if she decides to be uncooperative during the divorce proceedings, I'll put on my tough hat and ask for a generous settlement, which might even include some spousal support and other lovely perks. Now she's got a little motivation to just kick back and go with the flow. But rest assured, this challenging chapter of my life will soon be closed, and I can hardly contain my excitement. Oh, and here's a ray of sunshine in this otherwise gloomy tale. I triumphed over cancer. You see, post-traumatic stress, PTSD, can really leave some deep emotional scars. That's how it was for me. With a never-ending stream of complications, from the never-ending bankruptcy saga to the house-selling roller coaster and the heart-wrenching loss of our daughter, I felt like I was trapped in a spider's web of problems. It's not as simple as just saying, I want a divorce. I had moments of hope, but it always seemed like I got yanked back into that dark tunnel. The more she cheated, the less I felt attached to her, and the more she searched for new excitement, which had dwindled due to her unfaithfulness. It became a never-ending cycle, and she ended up having a total of 6 affairs. By the time the 6th affair occurred, we had 3 kids, relocated to Florida, shouldered numerous responsibilities, and I was deeply entangled in a complicated mess. Escaping this predicament was no walk in the park. Divorce might seem simple on the surface, but in reality, it was a lengthy, challenging, and strenuous journey. Her inconsistent job history, our ongoing bankruptcy situation, and the lack of extra funds to hire a lawyer made it even more daunting. It took me until this point to scrape together enough money to be able to afford one. Maybe my previous explanation wasn't entirely clear, but now you can grasp the intricate tangle of issues I was grappling with. She moved out, and for the past 4 years, we've been living apart. This separation brought some peace to my life and was also better for the kids. Surprisingly, my wife even suggested delaying the divorce until the lawsuit regarding our daughter's tragic death got resolved. Our daughter was tragically struck by a speeding police officer without lights or sirens. However, I explained to her that the legal process would likely drag on for years, and I didn't think she fully comprehended the situation. She has transformed into an incredibly difficult person, neglecting her children and focusing solely on herself. Her kids absolutely can't stand her, especially her 14-year-old daughter, who has zero interest in spending time with her. Additionally, she has to endure a 1-hour commute to her workplace. This is because no other local employers are willing to hire her due to her track record of engaging in inappropriate conduct on the job. I've made it clear to her that we will be filing our taxes separately from now on, and she'll have to handle her own tax matters. If we're not legally divorced by December 31st, I'll ensure that I file my 2020 taxes before her in January, claiming the child tax credit for my daughter. My daughter has been under my sole care for the past 4.5 years and hasn't spent a full day at her mother's residence. It's undeniable that I should be the one to claim the child care credit. I'm absolutely resolute when it comes to this year's tax situation. Regarding my personal life, well, it's been somewhat challenging following my battle with prostate cancer. However, my job as a journalist, a profession I've been dedicated to for 43 years, keeps me engaged and content, and my kids keep me occupied. I'm not actively seeking a new relationship at the moment. To quote Simon and Amp Garfunkel, I have my books and my music to protect me. I've undergone counseling, but life has prepared me to face difficulties. My father passed away when I was just 6 years old, and while I had a stepdad, he wasn't very involved in my life. I've actually honed some nifty self-sufficiency skills over the years, and when you throw in my Jewish heritage, it's like having a secret stash of inner strength. Mazel tov. Can you believe it? She's finally got those divorce papers in her hands, and boy, oh boy, is she fired up about it. She's asking, why the rush? Can't we just let a few more years slide by? Mind you, she's the one bringing in the big bucks, has zero parenting duties, and is shacked up with her latest extramarital squeeze, who conveniently happens to still be married. It's like she's trying to solve a puzzle with no pieces. All I really want is to break free from this marriage, but she can't quite wrap her head around why I can't hold off until our youngest hits 18 and tosses that graduation cap in 3.5 years. She's saying, you've endured this long, 4 years. Why rock the boat now? She even took offense at my remark about ending things for the sake of my own sanity, calling it disrespectful to our kids. Isn't it ironic that she doesn't seem to notice the irony in her cohabitating with another married soul, while she herself is still wearing the marital ball and chain? She's got her mind set on child and spousal support, despite my assurance that whatever the court decides, especially in Florida where child support is a must, I'd just hand it back to her because I'm about as interested in her money as I am in a pet rock collection. Her comeback? Nope, can't trust you. Now let's pause and reflect on this. Throughout our 25-year tag team, as far as I know, she managed to squeeze in 6 affairs, waved goodbye to our marriage and kids, hardly gave the little ones the time of day, and basically mastered the art of the me show. Yet she's questioning my trustworthiness? Well, my dear, this divorce train is leaving the station, whether trust comes along for the ride or not. I'm making an effort to keep this process as cost-effective and straightforward as possible for both of us. I've covered the lawyer fees, and all she needs to do is complete her paperwork, attend those parenting classes, and sign the divorce decree. I want to be clear, I'm not looking to exploit the situation. Even the thought of it makes me feel uneasy. If she decides to hire a lawyer, that's her choice, and the expenses fall on her, not me. I initiated the divorce proceedings back in September after 4 years of living apart, and she's wondering, why now? It's worth noting that she earns considerably more money than I do, and she's essentially residing in her boyfriend's place without paying rent, all while he's still married. In contrast, I've been renting a 3-bedroom apartment for the past 2 years with our 14-year-old daughter and my 25-year-old son. Before that, our 21-year-old daughter also lived with us in our previous marital home. Unfortunately, we lost that house to foreclosure because she refused to contribute to the mortgage or HOA fees. That decision to let the house go into foreclosure had repercussions because the forgiven debt from the foreclosure counts as taxable income, and it spiked my tax bill to $4,500. She declined to help with this expense. Now, here in Florida, child support calculations come into play. She's hesitant to pay, citing potential harm to her credit and worries about leasing a new car in 18 months. Her aim is to secure a divorce without any financial responsibilities. I've secured legal representation, but she hasn't taken that step. She even hinted at going after my pension if she ends up having to pay support. I haven't requested spousal support because I genuinely don't want her money, and I've made that clear to her multiple times. Unfortunately, she's not receptive to my stance. She's also expressing concerns about a visitation schedule. Interestingly, she's opposed to having a fixed schedule. This is quite ironic when you consider that since the start of the COVID pandemic, she's spent just a single Sunday afternoon with her 14-year-old daughter. Even before COVID, her involvement with her daughter was minimal. Maybe a few hours on a Sunday, never overnight, and never for extended periods. Given this situation, I'm contemplating the possibility that if she continues to drag her feet or targets my pension, I'm currently 65 and still working, planning to do so until my daughter finishes high school. I might opt to request both spousal and child support. In the 4 years since she moved out, and subsequently moved in with her married boyfriend, she hasn't contributed a single cent toward income taxes, which amount to about $8,500, our daughter's living expenses, or clothing. She did cover some medical bills because her birthday falls early in the year, and by law, she's responsible for the initial share of bills. However, she hasn't supported our kids during holidays at all. In these 4 years, we haven't had proper Thanksgiving celebrations for the kids. She claims she doesn't cook turkey anymore. Christmas has been far from satisfying, and their birthdays have been rather disappointing. Meanwhile, she and her married boyfriend somehow managed to build a new house. I'm still scratching my head trying to figure out how she pulled that off, so this divorce is shaping up to be quite intriguing. I'm striving to navigate this process as cost-effectively as possible because our 14-year-old daughter is the only common ground we share now. However, it might not be a straightforward journey, and it's likely that I'll have to firmly assert my position on matters like child and spousal support. We're in this situation due to her struggles with making rational decisions. She had 6 affairs within a 12-year span of our 26-year marriage. I won't back down, but sometimes being adaptable can be beneficial. Like a willow tree, I'll bounce back up while any opposition exhausts itself in futile efforts. I have a lawyer, while she's representing herself, pro se. Additionally, I've had sole custody of our youngest child exclusively for the past 4.5 years. Florida's child support laws are quite strict, so I'm not overly concerned about that aspect. I had a meeting with my attorney today, and we have a case management hearing scheduled in less than a month. This might come as a surprise to her because she hasn't completed the necessary forms, submitted financial information, or taken the mandatory child support and parenting course. I've handled all these responsibilities and am fully committed to seeing this process through. Her lack of progress won't sit well with the judge. I've improved at not letting her influence my decisions. I've been firm and resolute, consistently emphasizing that this is happening. I've waited a long time to finally free myself from this burden. My lawyer is managing most of the details, and I touch base with him periodically. We have a case management conference on the 19th, followed by a mediation meeting and a support conference. Hopefully, unless she becomes entirely irrational and forces me to take legal action against her, we could have everything settled by New Year's Day. It's time to celebrate like it's 2021. In situations like this, there's no magical solution. No amount of advice, discussions, or recommendations can repair a marriage that has veered so far off course. The only solution is to bring it to an end. It took me 5 years to reach this point. After she left, leaving me with the kids and the bills, even though she made more money than I did, it was a lengthy and challenging journey to get to where I am today. I had to navigate a battle with prostate cancer, which left me with reduced capabilities in certain areas. Additionally, I had to handle the devastating loss of our daughter, raise my remaining children without their mother, face the foreclosure of our home, and cover both her and my income taxes for 4 years because she refused to contribute, which amounted to about $13,000. This year, I separated our finances legally as the divorce had been filed, shifting the financial burden to her. I've endured significant losses, nearly 30 years that I could have spent with someone else who likely would have been faithful, someone to grow old with and cherish. The plain truth is that if she had the capacity to be faithful, I would have stayed and been the most devoted and loyal spouse imaginable. Instead, I find myself single, raising our 15-year-old daughter who is thriving in school, earning all A's and B's in her first year of high school. Yay! Working full-time and striving to avoid sinking into depression, which is not my usual state of mind. If only there were a genuine oracle who could gaze into a crystal ball, peer into a smoky pool, read tea leaves, or maybe a big blue genie who could grant wishes. My one wish would be to have my kids without the troublesome partner. Or if any of you out there happen to have finished with your magic rings or have a spare wish to throw my way, please feel free. But alas, that's not in the cards for me. What could have been a delightful life for both of us has transformed into a challenging endeavor to make ends meet. I'm not exactly residing under a bridge, but it's far from a carefree existence. At 67, I'm still in charge of raising a teenager, my 15-year-old who's about to be a high school sophomore, and I also have a 25-year-old son living at home. Sometimes I ponder what cosmic mishap led me to this situation. I must admit, Moving forward from here isn't just a challenge, it's downright disheartening. I've gone through 2 divorces. My Binford 3000 spouse picker is clearly malfunctioning. I'm a prostate cancer survivor with all the delightful challenges that accompany it. I'm sure you can relate. And I'm employed in a profession that's not exactly the most stable. Think of something black and white that's red all over. Besides my beloved kids, whom I absolutely cherish and would never neglect, there's no one else in my life. Sure, I have some friends, and a couple of them are keepers, but that elusive special someone has become as rare as a jackalope. The few dates I've had were rather uneventful, and I've pretty much put myself on the back burner, not for romantic adventures, but to contemplate life at my own leisurely pace. The last 45 or so years, which encompassed my first marriage, divorce, second marriage, and now this second divorce, have sped by like a blur. Whoosh! In some ways, this swift passage of time has been a blessing. It allows me to forget the pain, the suffering, the humiliation, and the deep, twisting agony of discovering not once but twice that I had married someone unfaithful. And not just someone who made a single mistake, but both times, I found myself entangled with serial cheaters. If that guy Joey from Cheaters had been involved, he would have had a field day with my ex-wives. I can picture that when my time comes to have a chat with the higher powers, if that's my destination, God willing, and if nothing too crazy happens. I'll have a few tough questions in mind. Questions like, what in the world were you thinking? Maybe there's a solid explanation, and just maybe, by enduring all this, I prevented some other unfortunate soul who might not have handled it as gracefully from a much darker fate. Whatever the reasoning behind it, it better be a really good one. So yesterday, I received a text from my freshly minted ex-wife, offering up a Happy Father's Day. I spent a couple of hours simply staring at that text. In the past, I'd usually give her a piece of my mind, reminding her that I'm not her father, and she'd counter with some mention of our kids. But I'm worn out from all the drama, the nonsense, just utterly fatigued. This year, I took the high road and replied with a simple thanks. Sure, I don't quite see eye to eye with the sentiment, but sometimes it's best to let things slide rather than stoking the fires of bitterness. And let's face it, there's zero chance she's going to get swallowed up by a sinkhole or whisked away by extraterrestrials, so I'll just carry on.
All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in.
I'm a 29-year-old woman, and I've been blissfully married to my high school sweetheart for 3 incredible years. We'll use the name John for him. Our love story has been anything but ordinary, and I count my blessings every day for having him in my life. John is a real estate agent who's doing quite well, and he's undeniably impressive in his profession. He's ambitious and devoted, and I have a deep respect for his work ethic. However, there's this one tiny thing about his job that occasionally pulls at my heartstrings. He's frequently out meeting clients, attending property viewings, and socializing at real estate gatherings. It can leave me feeling just a tad bit lonely at times. I've always been John's #1 cheerleader, and I wholeheartedly support his aspirations, but thanks to his jam-packed schedule, it can get a bit challenging. We used to spend a ton of time together back in high school and college, and now it feels like we've had to cut down on our quality time. While we make sure to treasure the moments we do get when he's around, there are days when I miss having him right by my side, even for something as simple as sharing dinner or watching a movie. But wait, here's where my remarkable college best friend Sarah enters the scene. She's been my rock through thick and thin, and we've made countless memories together over the years. Sarah has this incredible knack for helping me forget about the loneliness that sneaks in when John is away. We've always shared a unique bond, and I can't emphasize enough how thankful I am to have her in my life. One weekend, John left town for a few days to attend a convention, so Sarah asked me over for dinner to celebrate her recent promotion at work. I brought a bottle of champagne and knocked on her door. To my surprise, her brother Ezekiel, 28 years old male, answered. I was surprised to see him, but also a bit glad to see a familiar face. However, I had forgotten how tall and good-looking he was until now. We had a pleasant dinner conversation with Sarah and her parents. As the night went on, we all started feeling a bit tipsy from the wine. Sarah and her parents went to bed, and I was planning to call an Uber, but before I could even pick up my phone, Ezekiel put his hand on my waist. He asked if I wanted to continue, and without any hesitation, I agreed. We ended up on Sarah's balcony, and it made me feel alive again. I knew it was wrong, and I couldn't blame it on the alcohol, but I was drunk and had been feeling very sexually frustrated for a long time. I felt guilty afterward and hurriedly left through the door. The next day, my husband returned from the convention. As usual, he was exhausted and went straight to our bedroom without much conversation with me. I might have felt more guilty about what happened, but this was his usual behavior. He acted as if I didn't matter. I followed him to our bedroom to talk, but as he was changing clothes, we were startled by a loud knock on the door. He got to the door first, and I saw Sarah looking furious. I was completely bewildered and confused. She told my husband that he should be aware of the kind of person I was. She accused me of destroying our marriage by having closeness with her younger brother right on her balcony. My husband remained silent and appeared quite shocked. He glanced at me, but Sarah quickly grabbed his attention again, insisting that he should leave me, calling me a hoe, and blaming my sexual desires for ruining our marriage. My husband stayed quiet, only asking Sarah to leave. Meanwhile, Sarah continued causing a scene outside our home, leading our curious neighbors to peek through their windows to see what was going on. I pleaded with John to hear me out first, but he immediately told me to pack my things and leave the house. I persisted in wanting to explain, which only made him explode in anger. He claimed he was doing everything for our future family and that this was how I was repaying him. He used hurtful language and I couldn't bear it. I had to hastily pack some belongings and drove away without knowing where to go. I could really use some advice right now, as I'm in no condition to make decisions after everything that's transpired. I'm still in shock and feeling utterly lost. I feel like I'm all alone in this world and on the brink of losing my sanity. Please be kind and offer some guidance. Edit. No, it wasn't an affair. It was a one-time mistake, and I genuinely believe we can work through this as a couple. I don't think I deserve the derogatory labels people are using. I acknowledge my error and wish to return to our home, the one my husband and I built together, to start anew. Yes, I believe I deserve a second chance. Update. I thought I should give you an update on how things have turned out for me. I'm currently in the middle of divorcing my high school sweetheart. I still swing by his place to collect some of my things, because my new apartment is much smaller, and I don't have enough space for all my stuff if I take it all at once. I've tried talking to him and attempting to reconcile, but it's proven to be quite impossible. Either he treats me as if I'm invisible, or when he does speak to me, it's filled with hurtful words. I firmly believe I don't deserve to be treated like a criminal or a villain. I've been loyal to him since high school, even when he made mistakes or treated me poorly. I always chose him, but when I finally gave in to my desires once, he completely shut me out. I'm not claiming to be perfect, and he's not either, but he's acting like he's never done anything wrong. Alongside my divorce, I'm also experiencing the breakup of a long-time friendship, which is proving to be even more challenging than expected. I've tried patching things up with my best friend, but it seems that what I did has damaged our lifelong friendship irreparably. She even tarnished my reputation with our other friends, telling them about an untrue incident involving my brother. Now I find myself without a best friend or any friends for that matter. They've all taken her side without even hearing my perspective. They haven't been perfect friends either, especially Sarah, who made her own share of mistakes like dating one of my friend's exes. But now, she's acting as if what I did is the worst thing that's ever happened to her. I'm not claiming to be a saint, but I feel like everyone is being unnecessarily harsh. It's all just too much, but I'm determined to make things work. Although I'm not sure where to begin, I know I'll find my way back and get my life back on track.